Welcome to In the News for December the 8th, 2023. I am Brett Burney from appsandlaw.com.
This is Jeff Richardson from iPhone JD. Good morning, Brett.
Good morning, Jeff. Another week, another story about the government maybe watching over your shoulder a little bit. Well, actually, maybe not watching it so much, but they might be watching the notifications that you are getting on your phone. I didn't even conceptualize that this could be a possibility, really, Jeff. But what an interesting story you linked to today from Reuters.
Very interesting. A U.S. Senator, Senator Ron Wyden, he's a Democrat from Oregon. For the last year, his office has been looking into this. And sure enough, based upon a tip that they received, they learned that Apple and Google, one of the things that both companies offer are, of course, notifications. And so let me tell you what we're talking about. You know, for example, you may have a weather app that says if rain's about to come in your area, it will push a notification to you saying, hey, it's about to rain. The way that happens is it's not the actual app sending something directly to you, but the app goes through Apple, or if you're using an Android phone, it goes through Google, and then it goes down from Apple or Google to you. The record of that transaction, that the app sent the notification to Apple and that Apple sent it to you, along with some data involved in that notification, including in some cases the actual text that was displayed on your phone, all of that stuff is something that some unidentified federal governments, maybe it's the U.S. government, maybe it's foreign governments, my sense is that it's both, they have asked Apple to turn over that data for a specific person. So they may say, hey, I want you to give me the notifications that you've given to John Doe. I may not be able to hack into John's phone and actually see what the weather app is doing, but I want you to turn these over. And apparently Apple has a transparency report in which they, well, this part we do know, Apple has a transparency report in which they talk about things like this. But Apple, this is the part that was the news from the Reuters story. Apple was prohibited by the federal government from revealing that governments had been doing this, which is what makes me think that the U.S. federal government was one of the federal governments that was asking for this data. And they were prohibited from basically spilling the beans on it unless it become public. And so what Senator Wyden did by him making it public, then Apple responded and said, okay, now that it's already news, now we can say something about it, and we can confirm that absolutely this has been taking place. And so the thing to think about is, why does it matter? You know, notifications, the fact that it's raining in my area, why does that matter? Well, you know, one thing to think about is if you could figure out, let's just say that someone has this turned on, and let's just say that over the past 365 days, you can tell me every single time they've got a notification that it's about to rain. You can probably figure out where that person has been, you know, just by pinpointing the weather data. And that's just that's just location data. So without getting into their GPS or their locations stored on the device, but just from the notifications from weather data, you could find where a person has been over the past year. And some other app, you know, might have different things too, you know, so you can just think of all the different apps that you have that have notifications, and then think creatively about how might that information be useful. Now, of course, if it's a messaging app or something like that, and again, it's not like it's text messages, but some other maps that might send you some confirmation things, you know, someone, if they're smart enough, might be able to triangulate with that information. So, you know, we always know that governments out there, for good purposes and for bad purposes, you know, sometimes they're trying to catch bad guys. So we all know that, but we know that they're trying to get this get information about us. But this vector of getting it, you know, through notifications is just something that never even occurred to me before. And there's a good reason it never occurred to me before, because it wasn't public before until the good senator made it public. So, you know, it's just something to really be aware of, that when you are turning on notifications in an app, if this is of a concern to you, you should know that in theory, Apple might be required to turn over some of the data associated with that notification to a government, whether it's the US or some other country. If you have some connection there, who knows? Just something I never thought about before. Wow.
Yeah, it just doesn't sit right. It doesn't feel like it should sit right now, Jeff. I guess it's like, it doesn't surprise me that it's going on, because just like you said, we've talked about several stories before where, you know, Apple sometimes does have to turn over certain types of information from some kind of a subpoena or a governmental request of some kind. But I guess I've never thought about it in the sense of like the notifications that I'm getting. And you're right. That could just, even if that's just another little factor of an information piece, right, that they could put together with a bigger puzzle of some other things that they're looking at. I guess I'm thankful to Senator Wyden maybe for like bringing this up. And I'm thankful that obviously Apple, took it. Hey, it's like, hey, finally somebody mentioned it. So now we're just going to now we're free to be able to say something about it. The Department of Justice apparently declined to comment on the push notification surveillance or whether it had even prevented Apple or Google from talking about it. But this I guess I'll be watching this a little bit more. And I don't know if I'm going to turn off any notifications. I sometimes just find them to be so helpful. But I'm thinking of even like my WhatsApp notifications, things like that come through, not just obviously from a weather station, but I guess the more it's good to at least have some of that information there. But it still gets me a little nervous.
What interests me about it, Brett, is that it's another reminder, and it reminds me of a story that came out many, many years ago. It's another reminder that people can indirectly get information that they cannot necessarily directly get. Years ago, there was a story that websites would want to know who was visiting the website. And of course, you may have all sorts of blockers turned on and things like that to try to protect your anonymity. But one of the things that websites would in the past sometimes do is they would ask your browser, you're accessing this as a browser. What browser are you? What operating system are you? And they would ask what fonts are installed in this system. And you're thinking, why would a website care what fonts you have installed? And it was revealed that because of just the unique fonts that different machines would have, that was part of a digital fingerprint. And if you put enough of those things together, when the same computer goes back in the future, they know it's the same person. And so browsers have since, like Apple's Safari browser, will no longer reveal some of that information for the very reason. But it just goes to show you that information that seems innocent on its face, when you compare it with additional information and you put it all together and you triangulate it, you can actually use it for a purpose that it was never even intended for. And that's what this is an example of is, we don't know exactly what the governments are doing with the notification information, but they apparently think it's important enough to, number one, go through the trouble of doing it. And number two, in the case of the US government, prohibit Apple from talking about it publicly and spilling the beans. So it's just, unintended consequences. Very interesting.
I think I'm ultimately even just glad that Reuters at least broke the story, and hopefully maybe other watchdogs will be on the case now and kind of look and see where that goes. Interesting stuff. But thanks for the link on that, Jeff. Do you think it would be safe to say that maybe the most important person at Apple right now is Johnny Soroji?
I tell you.
You linked to a story today, an actual video from CNBC, which I think you even said in the link here, there's really nothing new in this little story. But for the first time, at least that I can remember, there's a video of footage inside one of Apple's, I think they call it their chip labs, right? So what we're talking about now, Johnny Soroji, they call him the head of silicon, right, at Apple. I didn't know he was been at Apple since 2008, first of all, but I learned that from this video. He's been there a long time, and he is the head of what Apple is trying to do with the Apple Silicon, which is basically the processor, right? The heart of all computers and obviously just about any device that we use today from a technology standpoint. And this was about a 17-minute video. Again, like you said in your link, nothing brand new in here or shocking, but just to get a little more insight of, not just Johnny Soroji, but it was John Turnus, right? Head of hardware at Apple, just to kind of really see where their thought processes are when it comes to what they're doing with Apple Silicon and the processors today.
When you think about the reasons that Apple's products are so good today, part of the reason is that Apple focuses on design and simplicity and making powerful features, easy to use. That's been a historical advantage of Apple. But one of the recent advantages of Apple has been these chips. It wasn't that many years ago that Apple was using the same chips as everyone else, Intel chips, Samsung chips.
Right.
And then they years ago purchased an Israeli company called PA Semi that was designing chips. And as you said, they brought in people who could help with that. And now one of the reasons that an iPhone is better than an Android that costs the same amount of money is that the chips are specially purpose. I mean, they are built specifically for what the iPhone is doing, and it's been a real advantage. And Apple has used the chips up and down the line. I mean, they started in the iPhone, but they go all the way up to the computers. They go all the way down to the tiny things in your AirPods and in your Apple Watch. And by designing their own silicon, it has really given Apple a competitive advantage. So it was interesting. When I started watching this video, it's 17 minutes long. I didn't think I was going to watch the whole thing, but I ended up just watching the whole thing because it was sort of interesting. Getting a peek inside of Apple, and the person that did the video from CNBC, she's right there on Apple's campus and stuff. Right. So it was interesting to watch. It really was.
I think I liked one of the things that John Turnus said. And by the way, both of these gentlemen you would recognize probably if you have watched the Apple announcements within the last 2 or 3 years, because both John Turnus and Johnny Soroji both have very big profiles in these in the Apple announcement videos that they have. Right, Soroji is always talking about like the chips that are happening, and you can usually see him in the lab. Right, they usually go underground, and I think even the last time was around Halloween, right? Didn't he come out and say, "Welcome to my lab," something like that? I mean, John Turnus is always in front of a big screen because he's introducing like what's going to be the next hardware aspect. And I think one of the things that John Turnus said somewhere in here, I can't remember exactly where it is, but he said it was like the laws of physics had changed back when Apple was able to switch their Mac computers from Intel processors to the M1 processor. Because you and I both remember way back in the day, Jeff, when Apple switched from the IBM processors to the Intel chips, right? That was huge for us, especially from a legal perspective, in the professional perspective, because we could actually run some different applications, or it gave us the ability to even run Windows on a Mac, all that kind of stuff. And that was a huge monumental shift. And I don't know if I even can realize how big of a monumental shift it was, again, just 3 years ago in 2020, when Apple switched to the M1 chips. I mean, I've enjoyed it. Like I tell people, there's no way I would use another computer. I even have an i7 Intel Windows computer that I use, and my M1 MacBook Pro still just blows it away. Like, it's just amazing how monumental that is. And the fact that even in 3 years now, we're already at the M3. I mean, just that trajectory even is pretty amazing that they're doing. I mean, I guess watching this video just kind of brought a lot of this to mind, as in like, I don't know if we really fully understand how big of a shift that has happened right now with Apple doing their own processors, and what that's going to mean even for the future, the near future even.
It is. It's huge. And it's not often that you see these huge chips that suddenly, 1 or 2 years later, things are so much faster. I mean, one of the examples that I notice in my own life is, I often take, videos of home videos of stuff. And it used to be with my my former Intel based Mac that when I was finished editing the video, I would then export it so that you could actually, watch it on the Apple TV and stuff like that. And, videos that weren't very long. I mean, I don't even know how long they were, maybe 5 minutes, but just because of my computer, it would take like 5 hours to render the video. So I would just start it up and go to sleep. And if I woke up the next morning and didn't like it, I'd have to do it again. And now that I have an M2 based Mac Mini, I start it and it's done in like 5 minutes. I mean, there's a huge difference between 5 hours and 5 minutes.
Incredible.
And it's enough that I can render it. And if I don't like it, I can just go back and change it. And again,
do it again.
It's not like we're going to see that much advances in the future, because although the M3 is better than the M2, and I'm sure the M4 will be better than the M3, but with that shift to the new processor has been huge. But I appreciate it just in terms of like rendering time for video. But what it also means is when the chips are that much faster, it means that technology can just do things that weren't possible before, whether it's a different type of camera, or whether it allows for really small products like the AirPods in your ears to just do things that they couldn't do before. It allows them to have new features. So it's a huge advantage. And I think it's important for Apple to be talking about this.
Or even quickly, I'll just say AI, right? I mean, everybody's talking about AI, and there's been, in fact, they even addressed this in the video. Yeah. Exactly, they even addressed this in the video that Apple is. Everybody's been kind of on the sidelines saying, "Apple, what are you doing?" Like Microsoft is working with OpenAI, and Google has their own Bard. And, all these other companies are doing so much with AI, and the reporter asked both John and Johnny, like, how do you respond to that? And they both were like, "We're not worried." Like, they're doing. I mean, I think honestly, Apple with some of these chips are even better set up to accommodate what we are going to be seeing in the next, I think, 5 to 10 years, just in the aspect of AI. And again, just from this video, you get a sense that what they just said there, they're not worried. It really prevails across the environment, right? In their teams. I mean, I remember distinctly in the video, Johnny Soroji even says, we are leading. We're not even a chip company, but we are leading the industry in the processors. And he just says it like without, smiling or kind of looking. It's like it's a matter of fact. I mean, they know obviously what they're doing on this, and it's just amazing. Last thing quickly before we move off, something that you and I have talked about quite a bit as well. One place where they are not leading and they probably would like to lead is in the modem aspect, right? You've talked about this very good before, Jeff, in the sense that we've been talking about the processors that power the iPhones, the iPad, the Macs, even the AirPods Pro, but modems inside the iPads and iPhones are a huge component, and the Apple Watch as well, right? And it sounds like Apple is still having to rely on, I think, Qualcomm, right? I mean, you know a little bit more about this too.
Yeah. Now, I mean, Apple wants to make their own modems, but Qualcomm makes the best ones in the industry. And so far, it just looks, Apple has tried to make their own modems without having to rely upon a third party like Qualcomm, and they can't do it. And, the question is, one of the things that was raised in the video is, at some point, will Apple just give up and just say, okay, we're just going to use Qualcomm forever? Or are they going to continue to try to come up with a new version? It just goes to show you that this stuff's hard. Making these incredibly small components, this is difficult stuff. And although Apple exceeds in many areas, doesn't mean that they're going to exceed in every area.
Let's move from processing power to battery power, a different kind of power. But now you're spending money out of my wallet again, Jeff, from a link that you had. What is the MagSafe Duo charger, right? Is the product that we've talked about. I don't even think that I linked to it right here, but it's like the little tiny booklet. I call it a little booklet fold out where I could charge both my Apple Watch and my iPhone. I love it. I've been using the MagSafe Duo charger for quite a while now, even when I travel. But you linked to a new product from one of our favorite companies, 12 South. They are launching the Butterfly MagSafe charger, and it looks spectacular. I like this.
It does. It folds up into a little tiny puck that can fit in your hand. So it's totally portable, very easy to take with you when you travel. But then when you unfold it, one half of the puck can use to charge your iPhone through MagSafe.
I love this.
And the other half can charge your Apple Watch. So perfect if you're traveling, you're in a hotel room, you go to bed at night, you want to charge your phone and your watch for the next day, you unfold it and let it go. And in that respect, it's similar to the product that you have, although I think it might charge a little bit faster. But then as an advantage, you can also take this, and if you fold it up one way, you can use it as something to prop up your iPhone. Why would you want to use that? To put the iPhone in standby mode, which we've talked about before, which is just a great mode that your iPhone's sitting over there providing you with useful information while you use your computer or do other stuff. Or you can prop it up another way, and it becomes just sort of a holder for the Apple Watch. If your Apple Watch, for example, is a nightstand mode where it just displays the time and stuff. So it's $130. I don't know if it comes with the USB-C cable. You may have to provide that separatry, but it's a nice little portable device that looks like, I mean, frankly, this looks like the device. I think that there's Apple no longer sells the one that we were talking about that you own, the MagSafe Duo charger. But they do sell this product, and part of me feels like Apple had the idea. They put, you can still buy it on Amazon, even though it's not sold through Amazon anymore, Apple anymore. But Apple came up with an interesting idea. But I think 12 South took it to the next level. And so, whether you're looking for something for yourself or a gift for somebody else for the holidays, it's a little pricey at $130, but it looks like it's really useful travel charger.
You're right. I was wondering why didn't I have the link to the MagSafe Duo charger from Apple, because they don't sell it anymore.
They don't sell it
just
anymore.
Like you said, but you can still get some of their stock from Amazon. And it's $100. I think I paid a little bit more than that. I think I paid, I think it was retailing for $129 itself. So it's the same price as this 12 South. But again, I love this thing. It was so portable, and I carried it. But we talked about this, I remember before, Jeff, when I got my iPhone 15 Pro, I didn't have a lightning cable in the bottom anymore, right? It was USB-C. This MagSafe Duo charger from Apple did not use USB-C. It used a lightning cable. So when I travel with this, I still have to carry a lightning cable. And that's one of the things that really excited me about this butterfly, other than the name is fantastic, of course, from 12 South. But it does come actually with a USB-C power cord, but you can use any USB-C power cord, right? That you can just plug in and travel with that. I mean, I've got to pre-order one of these, because I constantly use my MagSafe Duo charger, both at home and on the road when I'm traveling. And this just looks even better. It looks a little more compact. And the fact that I can prop it up, like, it's just genius the way they've done it, where I can prop up my phone so I can use standby mode too, is really, really nice. So good stuff on that. More power. Another thing you linked to today was the Nomad 65-watt slim power adapter review. This was a fantastic review, I think, from Justin Duino. Love this. This is great for traveling, but it can also be useful for home too.
Yeah, and what really amazed me about this is that the device is just so small. The use of what is it, gallium nitride, the GAN, big G, little A, big N, these
big N,
GAN chargers. It allows you to have a very small, doesn't take up much space, but it can provide a lot of power. This one provides 65 watts, so it's not a ton. For something like a MacBook Pro or a MacBook Air, it's going to charge a little bit more slowly. But for any portable devices, iPad, iPhone, et cetera, it's going to be perfectly fine. It's got 2 USB-C chargers for it. I mentioned in my review that I wasn't familiar with the Nomad brand, and sometimes I get nervous if it's a brand I don't know, because some people make really cheap devices. You and I were talking before we started to turn the camera on, and you reminded me that Nomad is a brand that's been out there for a while. That's good. Good. Hopefully it's good quality, and it's certainly a very favorable review here that's linked to. As he says in one of the headlines you have here, it's a charger the size of a Zippo, like a little Zippo lighter.
Right.
And so it's nice to have things that are small and useful for travel or just carrying around.
Yeah. And just so people know, like, this isn't a battery pack, right? So this is more of like a charger that you would take with me. And I did this. I did some research.
You put it in the outlet and you put your cord into it.
Correct. Yeah. Exactly. And so this is going to charge your iPad, charge your MacBook Pro, charge your iPhone, or whatever other devices that you have. But I did some research several months ago looking for one of these gallium nitride chargers, Jeff, because I didn't want to have, I had a separate brick for my iPad, another brick for my iPhone, and a big brick for my MacBook Pro, right? Sure. So I didn't want to carry 3 bricks with me.
No.
So what I slimmed it down. I ended up going with an Anker 120 watt charger. So it had 2 USB-C and 1 USB-A ports in there. And that has been fantastic for traveling because I can charge 3 items at a time. Now, he does a great job in this article, by the way, of the things that I ran into, that when you have multiple ports in here, even though this is a 65 watt power adapter, you only get 65 watts when you are just using a single port, right? In fact, they even have it color coded on here. He does a great job talking about that too. So, but if you're charging both your MacBook Pro and your iPhone at the same time, neither of those are going to get the 65 watts, right? It splits it into, I think he says here, 45 and 20 watts here. So that's not a big deal, except if you need to charge it quickly, right? And that's one of the reasons that I went with a bigger wattage adapter, because I wanted the ability to do fast charging. And sure enough, I can tell when I plug mine in, then it will do a quick charge on my MacBook Pro or my phone. In fact, again, the reviewer, I could hug him. He's so good in this. He said he used to travel with a 130 watt power adapter here. And he says that was great, except that was heavy. And mine is very heavy. I agree. So this one, as he's talking about, the 65 watt, is much slimmer, much less of a weight. And frankly, if you're traveling and you just need to make sure that, the power doesn't go down, this is a great option here. It's not going to do fast charging. You'll have to wait a little bit longer, but from a traveling perspective, it would be good. He even also says in here, this isn't something he would use at home, because once you're home, you can have a big brick, sitting on the side there, and that's fine. But from a traveling perspective, I think I might have to go into this, because I've run into the fact that my Anker 120 watt is so heavy. Sometimes, Jeff, it'll fall out of the socket, because it is so big, right? But this one, you have to look at the picture here. It's very slim, and it kind of fits flat against the wall in the power outlet there. Really a fantastic option here. I mean, I'm very tempted about this. So now I got to buy the Butterfly from 12 South and this one as well. But good stuff on this as well. Let's keep going on some battery power. Now, like I said, those were like charging capabilities, but another story you linked to was about the best MagSafe battery packs in 2023. This was a good rundown as well.
Yeah, we've talked about this in the past because I'm holding in my hand here the what Apple, speaking of things that Apple used to sell and they no longer do, their MagSafe battery pack. Right. And again, it's lightning on the bottom, so Apple doesn't sell it anymore because they want to move to USB-C. But I often have found this useful when I'm out in the go. I know I'm going to be, recording video or doing something that's very intensive, maybe in an area with poor cell coverage, and I know it's going to draw a lot of power. I just take this little thing, slip it in my pocket. It weighs basically nothing. I barely notice it.
Right.
And then if I need some extra power, it's so easy to just put it on the back of the iPhone and get extra power instead of plugging a cord in that connects to another device, and then you get cords all over the place and you're tripping over. So I love the form factor of a MagSafe battery pack, and this review does a nice job of sort of rounding up a number of the options, including the old Apple one, which you can still buy on Amazon, and some other options by other companies. Now, I will say, since and I alluded to this in my review, since I updated to the 15 Pro Max, just because it's my first Max phone that's bigger, it has more battery in it. And even when I push this thing to the limits, so far I have yet to get it to a day where I've run out of power at the end of the day. So the few times that I've taken this with me, it's been totally unnecessary. I guess it's still an insurance policy, but regardless, if you ever find yourself in situations where you need just a little more power at the end of the day, and I think this is a useful product to consider for those situations.
I remember watching a YouTube video not too long ago where somebody was showing the MagSafe battery pack from Apple, and they said this isn't like a charger, this is just a topper, right? It just tops off. And I think we've linked to a story from David Sparks, from the past, right, where he said something
just get
similar.
You through those last few hours.
Just the last few hours. But some of these are really some heavy duty other ones. Like, he doesn't even mention the Apple MagSafe. And the only thing that I would say, Jeff, I don't know if maybe it's improved, but I've used some non-Apple branded MagSafe chargers before, and they work okay, but they don't have all of the features built into the phone, right? Like it shows the circle there, and I can see how much power is in it even when I'm not, have it plugged in. I know maybe some of these newer ones there, that because he's got several here from Anker and Belkin and some of these others that I think would be, I'm sure, really, really good. But again, I don't know if you're going to be sacrificing anything. I really just wish Apple would update the MagSafe battery.
I did,
with
and
USB-C.
I really thought that they would. I figured it wouldn't come out the same time as the iPhone, but I thought that maybe just before the holiday buying season, then Apple would update it. And here we are in December, and they haven't done so. Maybe they'll do it next year. I hope they do, because you're right. The Apple product had just those extra little features that the third-party products didn't have that made it really nice. So we'll see.
I feel like I've got the iPhone 15 now with USB-C. If I get the Butterfly from 12 South, I can get rid of the USB-C on the MagSafe Duo charger, right? If I can get rid of this MagSafe battery from Apple, that isn't anymore Lightning. And then I just got to upgrade my AirPods Pro, right? Then I would be all USB-C. We talked about this, and I'm so frustrated because I have to spend more money to upgrade everything to USB-C. I know it'll be worth it in the end, but wow, Christmas is getting a little hard on the wallet right now. Okay, speaking of the iPhone 15, how about another review of the iPhone 15 Pro Max? A lot of these came out months ago, a couple of months ago, but Stephen Hackett, we got to give him some screen time because this is always some good insights that he provides here.
Yeah, Stephen Hackett he's got a number of podcasts and websites and stuff like that. He knows what he was talking about. Sometimes I enjoy reading these reviews that come out a couple of months after the product, because it means that the person has had time to reflect upon what parts of it useful. So part of this review, it's just the same sort of standard review of an iPhone 15 Pro Max that people, like me, were writing months and months ago. But he also provides a little perspective here. He talks about how this is the move towards, Apple having USB-C, which you just talked about 10 seconds ago. Apple's now in that world of everything USB-C. He talks about the 5X camera, which is nice, that telephoto camera. But one of the things he mentioned at the end is that when Stephen Hackett has a huge collection of Apple products, he's got some of like the Apple products released in the 1980s, 1990s. He basically has a little mini museum in his house. You've got some pictures of it here, and he's a sort of person that thinks about where a product not only is what is it going to do today, but where does it fit in the big picture and the timeline of Apple. And he points out that there have been some iPhones over the years that are iconic enough in their design and features that people will
Right.
in the future look back at them and say, that was a good one. And I feel that way about things like, of course, the original iPhone was so groundbreaking in what it could do. The iPhone
Right.
4 was the first one that sort of had the flat sides, which was really nice for holding it in your hand. The iPhone 5 was the first one with the tall screen. I actually
Yeah.
think that there's a chance that this design, the iPhone 15, I think this one might go down in history years from now, that people will look back and say, this was a really good one. I mean, the use of titanium means that
Right.
you can
Right.
get a lot, it's lighter, even though it's just the same size as before, which is
Right.
groundbreaking. I really
Yeah.
like the flat side with just sort of the slightly soft edges on it. I think, Apple always tries to come up with new designs every year. Some designs are better than others, but I agree with him that this might be a design that years from now, we look back and say, gosh, remember how good that iPhone 15 was?
Yeah.
I really think it will be.
That's excellent. Yeah, good review. We'll make sure that we'll link to it. If you have a brand new iPhone and you've upgraded to iOS 17, you might want to take advantage of the new name drop feature, which we saw kind of highlighted back even in the summer. With some of the new features coming in iOS 17. They didn't have it at the first 17, I think, or maybe they did. Anyway, it's out now, especially if you've even upgraded to 17.1. But there's some really good stuff in here and how I've used it before, and I love it. You just basically tap the phones together, and you can trade contact information that way.
Yeah, I mean, the article that you're showing from Joe Rosignol of MacRumors talks about when iOS 17.2 comes out, which I'm pretty sure is going to be next week. I think we're a few days away from it because the beta version is now in the release candidate stage, which usually means that we're just days away. So my guess is that on Tuesday or Wednesday of next week, we are going to see iOS 17.2. And one of the features it adds is the name drop feature is the one where you can take two iPhones and put them next to each other and just leave them for a second without doing anything else. And something will pop up on your screen that says, do you want to share your contact information with the other person? And you can share just yours, you can just get theirs, you can do it both ways. It tells you what's being shared. It's like the digital version of sharing a business card. But what the article from MacRumors reports is that starting next week, in addition to sharing a digital business card, you'll be able to share some other things like boarding passes, movie tickets. How many times one person might have all the boarding passes or the movie tickets or the theater tickets on their phone, and then you want to just take one of those passes and share it with somebody else. And apparently that will be possible. You'll be able to take something in the wallet app on your phone and share that pass with somebody else's phone and transfer it. So I haven't seen this in action yet. I didn't even hear about it until just yesterday when I saw this article, but bravo. I mean, I think that's a great idea. So I really look forward to seeing how this works.
Yeah, I think I had two links here that we were talking about, but I like this one about doing the name drop feature and sharing your contact information. You got to make sure this all happens over AirDrop, right? Which is a technology that's been around for a while. But one of the great things about this article, and I'll make sure it's in the show notes here, is that in order to use name drop, you got to have the proximity sharing turned on. You got to make sure that you can receive, information from AirDrop. Sometimes I've turned this off because I'm in a strange location and people are trying to AirDrop things to me that I don't know, right? So sometimes you say you just want to limit it to only your contacts, that kind of a thing. But if you walk through this story here, this will give you a good overview of how you can make sure that you do have name drop set up. And it's really neat when it works. It's just your screen kind of melts and it does a wobble, and then
it is a fun effect. Yeah.
Yeah, it really is cool on that. Also with 17.2, you linked to a story from John Gruber. We might see finally the demise of the name of iTunes, something that's been around for many, many years. This doesn't surprise me, I guess, because even, for those of us that are using Macs, we don't even have iTunes software on the Mac anymore. That was a couple of years ago that we did away with it. And all the tools that we used to use within iTunes were kind of melded into other apps or into the actual Finder. There's a music app now instead of iTunes. I think there is still iTunes software available on the Windows, but it's just because it's a legacy aspect on there. But John Gruber reports that when 17.2 comes out, even the Apple TV shows is going to have iTunes movies or iTunes shows on there any longer. Might be the end of the road for the iTunes name.
Yeah, the name is going away. And in the future, if you want to purchase or rent a movie or a TV show on an Apple TV, instead of doing that in a separate app that has the name iTunes associated with it, you will just use the Apple, the TV app on the Apple TV.
Right.
So that's where you'll find that in the future. But yeah, and when this happens, Brett, I think you're right. Unless there's one I'm not thinking about, I think the only one left that will still use the name iTunes will be the Windows software that you use to sync an iPhone with Windows. So maybe Apple will keep that out there, or maybe eventually they'll change that too. So it's the iTunes name has had a very, very long run. Using an I in front of a word was something that started way back when in the 1990s with the iMac, and for a while everything Apple had an I in front of it, including, for example, although the Apple Watch is called the Apple Watch, the theory was that when it was in development, Apple internally called it the iWatch. And I'll always remember that one of the earliest interviews of Tim Cook is that he slipped and he called it the iWatch, and then he corrected himself.
Oh, really?
And called it the Apple Watch. That was a long time ago. But Apple now likes to use Apple and then the name. So Apple TV, Apple Movies, Apple Photos, Apple whatever. And they no longer have the I. But iTunes is still around, and they're getting rid of that one too. And of course, the I in iPhone, that name is so iconic that I don't expect Apple to ever change the name to Apple Phone. I think it will be called the iPhone forever. That'll be the one place that the I will stick around, but we'll see.
Or maybe the Apple Pad. It just doesn't work, right?
Yeah.
If you have an Apple TV, you had a link to a new app that could come to the Apple TV.
This is cool.
The Zoom app. Yeah, I want to know, what do you think about this? Obviously, you're pretty excited.
I am, because I have used this continuity camera on FaceTime on an Apple TV, and it's so cool because what you do is you take your iPhone, which has a really good camera, and you put your iPhone right in front of your television. And of course, it works better if you have like a little stand. And I've reviewed one in the past from, I think the company name is Belkin, that I use. But however you prop up your iPhone so that the really good camera on the back of the iPhone faces you, and so it captures you, it becomes your video camera, and then on your screen you see the other person you're talking to, and it works really, really well. It's just like you're looking straight at each other. So that's in FaceTime, and it's been around for a while, but Apple has opened up this feature, continuity camera, to other third parties. And so now Zoom, which of course is one of the biggest folks when it comes to video conferencing, Zoom is going to have, or they've just released an Apple TV app, so you can have a Zoom conference. I use FaceTime at home, but I mean, if you're a business and you have, like just a screen that you use for video conferencing, you can just prop an iPhone, and you're going to get better quality than, I'm sure, expensive office video cameras, and you're looking right at the screen, and because the iPhone is right in front of the screen, it's like you're looking at the people you're talking to. If you haven't had an opportunity to use continuity camera for video conferences yet, it's a really, really nice feature. So it works great in FaceTime because it's the same technology. I'm sure it's going to work great on Zoom as well. Hopefully it'll eventually come to Microsoft Teams and some of the other players in the video conferencing market. But this is great.
It sounds like a project for the holidays, because I know most of the people that I would talk with, family wise over the holidays, are probably going to use FaceTime, and I haven't even tried it. I remember you've talked about this before, but I want to try the FaceTime. But like you said, now for Zoom, if I got people that aren't necessarily available to get onto FaceTime, right? I could talk to friends and everything this way through Zoom. Now I'm excited about it. This is really good. Where are you at segment? We've talked about using AirTags in different places, and not only us, there have been police departments, law enforcement have said AirTags are great to be able to track stolen cars. Well, now, maybe something even more important. We can use AirTags to track jackets. What a great story this is today, Jeff. I love it.
I had never even heard the name Canada Goose. I'm sure many people that are listening know exactly what a Canada Goose jacket is. Apparently, they can cost over $1,000, but they are popular enough that they are being stolen in Washington, D.C. in such numbers that the police decided to tell people, hey, just stick an AirTag in your jacket so that if somebody steals it, you can try to find it again. So it's just an interesting idea. I guess, so last month it was cars. This month it's the jacket. What are the Washington, D.C. police going to tell us next month to stick an AirTag inside? I don't know. But apparently this is their solution, is you put the AirTags in there and we'll find it when it's stolen. But
I feel like we talked about AirTags as like almost a must-have for last holiday, and it seems
Yeah.
like they're back again, Jeff. I mean, you can get a 4-pack now. Like what did we talk about? If you get it down to like $82 or so, like it's almost a no-brainer. Like get a 4-pack of these and just have it around. Again, I started putting them in not just for traveling, but in like my wife has one in her purse, for example. I mean, if nothing else, I think what a lot of people are doing is just using it as a deterrent, right? If law enforcement is out there telling people, hey, use these, then obviously other people are listening and they're maybe saying, well, I don't mean, maybe I'll think twice about stealing something because I could easily be tracked in that. They even also mentioned, by the way, if you don't use an iPhone, you can use a tile tracker for kind of the same thing. But AirTags, we just know work great. It saved my bacon a couple of times. I know it's done as yours, especially on the travel side. And then another quick where you at a story you link to. Yet again, Apple Watch fall detection helps a hiker get help after a near fatal fall. This was a little scary. Gentleman had his dogs. They started running after a coyote. They dragged him along. He broke his leg. And thankfully, the Apple Watch, he couldn't get to his phone, but the Apple Watch called emergency personnel for him.
Yeah, this is the thing. I mean, he didn't expect to be drug off the road by his dogs. You can see how that could happen, and for him to be injured. And then suddenly he's in a situation where he can't even get to his iPhone to call for help. And he was so thankful that his Apple Watch automatically did it and got him help, because as this story points out, just a month earlier, somebody else had been hiking in the same area and actually had died because nobody knew about them. So I mean, it shows you in a very real world. I mean, it's the same type of story that we talk about all the time. Maybe this one was a little different with the dogs pulling you off the trail because of a coyote, but it's the same idea. You find yourself in a situation that you never expected to be in, and thank goodness you can get your help. So more of that technology from Apple for finding people.
Yeah, this was what I like about some of these stories that you link to is that it's typically a little news segment from like a local news television station.
Yeah.
And so it's one thing to read the story, but it's another thing as you're talking, it's to see the actual person and and talk, like you even see their dogs. I mean, it's just to be able for them to talk about it, themselves is, I think, a little bit more powerful on that, which is great.
I'll tell you one more thing about this Find My stuff, Brett, before you move on.
Yeah.
I was sort of chuckling to myself last night about something that my daughter told me. I think back to the when I was younger, it happened to be in the 1980s, but the same story is true if you were younger in the 90s or the 70s or the aughts, is, we used to go ride our bikes places. My parents had no idea where we were. If somebody stole my Canada Goose jacket, nobody knew where, that was just, but we live in this day and age with Find My. So last night I was picking up my daughter from school, and I was on one part of the school campus, and it turned out that my daughter was on a different part of the campus, and I was confused. But when she finally got in my car, the first thing she turned to me and she says, "Well, Dad, why didn't you just use Find My to see where I was?" And I just had to laugh to myself that we now live in this day and age where, the kids, well, of course Dad. You should know where I am, Dad. You should have just kept on Find My. And I'm like, my goodness, we have come such a long way. So anyway, that was my
such a long way. Good stuff on that. One last little video you link to, which I always love at the bottom. You put something fun. This is a new video from Apple called Album Cover. Which at first I was like, okay, they're going to talk about, this was a new feature, right, in Apple Music, that you could design your own Apple cover for music. And I'm like, okay, I got it. I know it.
That's not what this is.
This video, I'm not going to give anything away, but the video is really highlighting some of the powerful tools in being able to modify a picture, which I think, again, just goes back to the fact that we can even do this in real time the way that this little video is showing. Is a testament, again, to the processors, right? The fact that we have this much power, graphical power even, inside an iPhone that we hold in our hands, and they can do all of these things in this video is just really amazing. But it's a funny video, too.
It is, and I don't want to spoil it either. So folks listening haven't watched them yet. It's just like a minute long. It's got a little twist surprise about 30 seconds in that'll make you laugh.
Well worth it. In the know. One of the things we've talked about several times, I know, is what Apple now calls the quick actions on the iPhone. I think at one point, if I'm not mistaken, Jeff, this was called like 3D Touch, right? Was that maybe like the old iPod Touch or the old iPhones? And then they've improved it. And so now it's called quick actions. And what this is on your phone, and most people probably know this and at least take advantage of it to some extent. If you tap and hold your finger on an app, you will sometimes get a secondary menu that pops up, almost like a right-click menu, if you wanted to put it in that term. Now, you can tap an app and it opens, right? And if you tap and hold for too long, you go into what we technically call jiggly mode, right? And that's when you can rearrange your apps and that kind of stuff. But in the middle, you can tap and hold, and as soon as you see the secondary menu come up, you just let go. And this works for a variety of apps, and all of the Apple apps will do something like this. And then many third-party apps will have some of these as well. For example, you can touch and hold on the camera, and the quick actions come up about taking a selfie, taking a video. You can quick tap and hold on the Notes app to do a brand new note quickly. It's just like a little shortcut. But here's one. All of this I kind of knew, and I know a lot of people know. But one thing I did not use the quick actions for a lot, Jeff, is the Settings app, right? The little gray gear icon. You know, one of the things when I'm talking with people all the time, they have issues with they want to see what their battery life is, you know, or they want to see their Wi-Fi, what they're connected to, or they want to connect or disconnect a Bluetooth item. Well, before I would have to tap the Settings app, go into there, scroll up and down because I'm never at the right place, find the Wi-Fi, tap into the Wi-Fi, you know, turn it on, all that kind of stuff. Same with the Bluetooth. But if you tap and hold on the Settings app, there is a beautiful series of 4 little settings in the secondary menu. You can go quickly to the battery. You can go to cellular data, which I don't do very much, but the Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. I love that. I use this now almost constantly, just from the very fact that when I want to jump in and see, did my AirPods connect to my phone, I can just tap and hold on the Settings app, which is always on my home screen, by the way. It's in my bottom right corner of my little dock down there. So it's always accessible, right? Tap and hold, and I could jump directly to the Bluetooth capability, and it's right there. And then sort of a sub tip quickly on this. If you have trouble tapping and holding and getting to the secondary menu, Apple actually allows you to adjust the time of how long you want to tap and hold on there. And to do this, you have to go all the way into the Settings app this time. You go to the accessibility functions, you tap into touch, and then I think what they call is it touch accommodations? Oh yeah, touch. And then there's the haptic touch in there is where I go, the haptic touch. So there's many names here, the quick action, but in order to get to the quick actions, it's the haptic touch. And then you can see there's 3 options, fast, default, and slow. And there's even a little item there that you can test with right there so that you can see what is going to be your preferred haptic touch to get to the quick actions. So that's my tip for the day.
Yeah, I want to start by saying a few things about this tip. This is a great tip because it's easy to forget that you can just hold your finger down on the app icon and have these options. On the Settings tip, the one that you recommended, what's so nice about it is if you just open the Settings app, it will typically bring you to where you were before, which may have been like yesterday, you were 3 levels deep in a menu. And if you just want to go to like Bluetooth, like you said, a perfect example, you got to go back and scroll all the way up, stuff like that. Whereas if you just do this tip, you can jump straight to Bluetooth. And I'm going to just a couple more, just to piggyback on your tip. If you hold down on the Messages app, which is one I have on my home screen, it will show you the people that you text with most frequently. And so rather than open the Messages app and then find their name and tap on their name and then start texting, you can just, hold down for a second and then select their name and go directly into texting with them. That's really cool. The another one that I use is if you hold down on the App Store icon, it has a thing for updates. And so if there's a new version of an app out, and this is something that I use because I'm a little geeky, I heard there's a new version of XYZ app. I want to make sure I get the newest version.
Yeah, you want
I hold down, do updates, and then I can get the updates, which I like. And then the last one is sort of fun is if you hold down on the photo icon, one of them that I see on here is called 1 year ago, and it will show you pictures from not exactly a year ago, like it'll go a day ahead or a day behind, but it's just sort of a fun way of, hey, what was I doing this time last year? And it'll just pick a couple photos and show it to you. It's just sort of a fun little thing. So my point is,
that's the photo app. Is that the photo app?
Yeah, that one doesn't show up on yours for photos?
Photo app. I'm doing the camera
photos,
app.
the
Photo
Apple,
app. Gotcha.
not the
Yeah.
camera
Okay,
app,
there
the
it
Apple
is. Got it.
Photos app.
Got it.
Exactly.
Ooh, I like that. That's so great.
It's just sort of a
Okay,
fun
thank
little
you.
reminder from a year
Yeah.
ago. Some third-party apps support this. Many of them don't, unfortunately. I wish they all did.
Yeah.
But all of
Yeah.
Apple's apps do support it. So I just want to second on that tip, and it's really good.
Yeah. I know we've covered this several times, but this
We
is
have,
one
but
of
it's
those
so
oldie
much
but goodies and good reminders. Yeah.
And it's a good reminder. My tip of the week is something that I saw earlier this week. And Brett, you may know something about it because you were there.
Okay.
I saw you give a presentation earlier this week. One of the things, my tip of the week is not you, Brett, but you happen to be secondary to it. Brett, of course, you have a consulting business and you talk with law firms all the time.
Right.
We had you working with our law firm earlier this week and doing some iPad training, and you're great. But the tip is that something that you happen to do that I haven't seen before. How many times have we seen a person talking with slides behind them? That's every PowerPoint presentation, every keynote presentation. Sometimes they'll be fancy enough to have like an object on the left side of the slide that when they advance will move to the right side of the slide, like simple little animations. But one of the things that I saw you do, Brett, to give you a compliment that was really effective is you had a couple of slides that while you were talking about a topic, when you advanced to the slide automatically full screen started showing the video without sound of something. And so, for example, you're talking about like the introduction of the iPad, and it just happened to have behind your head Steve Jobs on stage talking about the iPad introduction back in 2010.
Right.
And I thought it was a really effective presentation techniques. As many presentations as I see as a lawyer, I go to continuing legal education all the time, but we all see presentations all the time. I so rarely see somebody when they advance to the next slide just have full screen video behind them. It's just sort of a secondary thing. And like the audience is still listening to the speaker, but that video is there and it's something interesting to look at. You don't want to do it for every single slide, but you did it a couple of different times during the presentation, Brett. And I wanted to give you some kudos because I actually thought it made your presentation much more interesting. And so my tip is, if any of you are doing presentations in whatever context, and you just want to spice up your presentation a little bit, have some full screen video behind you, just something playing, while people are listening to you. It spices up the presentation. It's really cool. And I saw your presentation and then I was thinking about this afterwards, and it just, how something just gets into your head. And so I went to Google and I just did a search for, video, slide, presentation, PowerPoint. And there were many people on YouTube that were showing off how you do this in PowerPoint, how you do this in Keynote. So apparently it is something that good presenters know how to use. But I had never seen it done before this week, and I thought it was really effective. So that's my tip.
Thanks.
If you're giving a presentation, you want to spice it up a little bit. And I guess I'll ask you, just to peek under the curtain. When you were doing your presentation, Brett, were you using Keynote for your slides?
I was. Okay. I like both Keynote and PowerPoint, but I think Keynote's a little superior when it comes.
I use them both depending on the context. Right. Yeah, it just depends on what I'm doing. And so when you did it, Brett, I presume that you just took a video file, you put it on the on the slide, you made sure that it was full screen, and I think that there's an option. Is that like you click right on it and there's an option to begin the video automatically when you get into the slide? Is that how you do it?
That's right. Exactly. Yeah. So sometimes, by default, typically the video doesn't start until you actually click the mouse button.
Yeah, but you don't want that, right?
But you don't want that. But you can just go into the settings, whether on PowerPoint or Keynote, and you just say, I want it to start playing immediately after the transition being from the last, the previous slide, and to go. But yeah, there's all kinds of ways that you could use this really effectively. And, I really appreciate that so much, Jeff. Thank you. But it's just that having that visual appeal to it, right? So that people are still listening to you. But today, we're just so inundated, with so much, bombardment of like different visuals and stuff. It's good to have something to keep people's attention a lot of times too.
Yeah, great little feature.
Thank you. And by the way, I was using Teams on that, Microsoft Teams, to give that presentation. We were talking about Zoom earlier, and I was just saying, I think we talked about this just a little bit, but Teams has this really nifty little presenter mode or layout mode. I know you've used some of this as well. I don't think this has come to Zoom yet, maybe in some beta versions or so, but this has got to come to Zoom, because it gave me the ability to, like, I was a little picture. I wasn't like a separate picture video, right, with my content on the side. I was talking in front of my video, but I was a little in the little corner down there, similar to what you might see if people like, weathermen or something like that, weather people, if they're like doing a weather say. But there's different modes that you can do within Teams. And I had just never used it, but I thought it was really effective and really neat there. And I think more and more people would do it. You've used other apps like right, or something like that too.
In the past.
Yeah.
But this Microsoft Teams, anyone that's listening that uses Microsoft Teams in their office, this just came to it a couple of months ago, and it works. So what we're talking about here is you have your slides, and instead of your slides taking over the screen so that people can't see your face, what you can do is you can have this mode where your face appears on top of the slide. That is called the that's called, I think, standout mode.
Yep,
but then there's another mode called reporter mode, which is where your slides are in sort of a box. And you see this for every news report on television, where the slides are sort of smaller in a rectangle beside you. And then you're right here so that people can see your background. So standout mode, it cuts out your background, and it works really well if you have a green screen, but you don't need a green screen. It works even without it. And then reporter mode. But these are things that, although they've been in Microsoft Teams for a few months now, I have used it when I've done little internal presentations in my law firm. And then people come to me and it's like, wow, that's a, how did you do that fantastic feature? And I'm like, I pressed a button. There's nothing to it. You just have to know that it's out there. So
giving the secret away.
So that's a little bonus presentation tip is if you have Teams, you can do this. If you have Zoom, I don't believe it's built in yet, but there are some third-party apps like the one called which is MMHMM, which will do something similar. So another cool little presentation.
Great stuff. Wow, like multiple tips. I love it, Jeff. And thank you so much for the kind words. I really appreciate it. Wow. Okay, a couple more weeks before Christmas, so we're gearing up for everything there. And hopefully we were hoping next week we could talk about 17.2 this week, but not yet. It's not out yet. Maybe by next week
maybe we will. We'll see.
Okay, we'll talk to you then next week, Jeff. Thanks.
Thanks, Brett. Bye-bye, everybody.